DIY Watch Club sent me a watch kit. And so in this video, we're gonna figure out if this $300 skeleton dive watch kit is worth your hard-earned cash. And I'll also be finding out whether this watch kit is truly beginner-friendly when I tell you about my building experience. No watch is perfect, so I'll be telling you about the surprising gripes I had with the watch itself. And lastly, I'll be reviewing the watch tool that DIY Watch Club has sent over that supposedly makes the watch building process a whole lot easier. This is a 40mm diver in terms of its diameter. It has a lug-to-lug of 47.5mm, a thickness of 13.3mm, and a supposed water resistance of 10 atmospheres or 100 meters. And we'll get to the caveat there that I noticed a little bit later on. So just to be completely transparent with all of you, DIY Watch Club has sent me this watch for free. I don't have to return it. But as always, they don't have any input on the content of this video, so my thoughts are still completely my own. One of the purposes of these DIY Watch Club kits is to gift them as presents. And if you want to give someone a present, usually people want it to look nice and be presentable. And I think that DIY Watch Club does a great job at presenting the tools in the watch kit. The tools seem to be of higher quality than some other watch kits I've reviewed. For instance, the watch hand removers are made of metal, which is something that you don't find in other watch kits. Aside from that, I think you can just feel a slight quality difference between this watch kit and some others that you can find floating about online. So the one thing that I struggled with was putting on the seatbelt NATO strap. And to be fair, that was partially my fault because it wasn't that difficult to wrap your head around, but basically you had to adjust this part for the back of the watch to actually extend it. And in order to do that, you had to take off a spring bar from the clasp and remove it and then adjust it once again for the sizing of the watch and then put it back in. Compared to other NATOs I've owned, this is noticeably more difficult to use because I found that when I had to put the spring bar back into the clasp, it was quite difficult. The strap also has another pretty big problem that I will get to a little bit further on in this video. Also, if you're enjoying this video, I would definitely recommend hitting that like button, commenting down below because as always, I try to respond to the majority, if not all of your comments. And of course, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. They had a pre-cut stem, which is something you don't see in some other watch kits. And also just when you're trying to build a watch online with AliExpress, they don't come with pre-cut stems. And also the crown was already screwed on to the stem and it was glued on with Loctite, which is also just another step that makes this process a whole lot easier. Throughout the build process, I was referencing the DIY Watch Club watch videos and their tutorials, which are extremely useful. I would definitely recommend checking out their YouTube channel if you have any sort of concerns about particular parts of the build process. The videos are very high quality and I really do appreciate them. Okay, another thing I will give kudos to DIY Watch Club is the easy bezel insert installation. And I've never inserted a bezel, and of course, you know, there's not much they can do to actually mess this up, but that's just something I wanted to mention. I was a little bit worried about the sapphire dial that I had to install on this watch because it's a sapphire dial, it's quite brittle. In their previous versions, you had to actually screw it down onto the movement, but in this version I noticed that you didn't. It had dial feet, and also the dial feet were already pre-cut for the movement, so that saved another part of the build process. It was really a headacheless build process. You just plopped it on to the movement. The DIY Watch Club watch kit comes with a clear case back. That's something that usually other watch brands charge you more for as an extra add-on, but this comes in the package, which is really cool. There's something just so mesmerizing about a watch movement, especially when you're starting out. If you are interested in this particular kit, I will have it linked in the description below, and if you use my link and my coupon TimeTicker5, you'll get 5% off your purchase. If you aren't interested in this particular kit, I would still definitely recommend checking out DIY Watch Club using my other link in the description, because you'll also get a 5% discount. They just have a ton of other watch parts and watch kits that may be right for you. And if you aren't interested in Seiko modding, they also have some Miyota kits and a kit where you can build a watch that has a Swiss movement. So this comes with a ceramic bezel, a acrylic crystal that I will get to my thoughts on a little bit later in this video, a stainless steel watch case, and an NH70 skeletonized movement. Apparently, Seiko is going to up their prices in NH70 movement. That probably means that the DIY watch kit is gonna go up in price a tad bit. So if you're looking to purchase a skeletonized movement, I would definitely move a little bit quicker because prices are most likely gonna go up. The specifications at this price point are pretty good, but they aren't stellar because this whole watch kit isn't primarily focused on the end result itself, but rather the build process and making that seamless. And by no means does this mean that this watch is not a wearable watch. I really do enjoy wearing this watch, and it's a good watch on its own, but what you're paying for is mainly for the seamlessness of the process. This is the tool that DIY Watch Club sent over that was supposedly supposed to make the second-hand installation seamless, because that's actually one of the most difficult parts about putting a watch together, putting the second hand on the movement. For my first build, I struggled a ton with the second hand. Once you're done watching this video, I definitely recommend checking out that video because it's super entertaining, in my opinion. Virtually every video I've seen online that has a beginner building a watch, their first watch usually lacks a second hand because they've broken it. So this is supposed to remedy that, and I was super excited to get my hands on it because there are people in my comments who are saying, you know, my hands aren't like the way that they used to work. I really wish I could build a watch, but it doesn't seem like that's a feasible idea. So when I tried to use it, I will admit that it wasn't as easy as I hoped it would be, and that's probably a user error on my behalf. But one thing that I did notice was that basically there's these two pieces of plastic that come together, and you have to put the second hand in the hole in between them, and then you put the whole cover on top of the movement. One thing I did notice, however, was that the plastic sheets were moving up and down and they weren't perfectly aligned. Even when I tried my best to perfectly align them with my fingers and they were perfectly aligned, the moment I put it on the movement, it just seemed to be misaligned each time. So what I did was I just installed the second hand like I normally do. If I did put more time and effort into using it, I'm almost 100% sure that if I had never built a watch before and I had this secondhand installation tool, I would have not broken my second hand. The risk of actually breaking your second hand with that tool is very low. It's just personally, I found it easier to use it freehand because I've been doing this for a little while. This is my fourth build. The NATO strap isn't perfect, and it's not just the difficulty I had with the spring bar, it's also the fact that this NATO strap is quite short. And you'll see in the B-roll that it looks a little bit strange because of how short this NATO strap is. My wrist is 6.5 inches, and if you have a wrist even slightly above 6.5 inches, you will definitely need to change out the NATO strap. And the NATO strap isn't anything to write home about. It's an okay NATO strap. I wish they just provided a normal ribbed NATO. Something that I would have preferred is a chapter ring on the inside of the watch instead of having a sort of messy bezel with all the different markers on it. This watch doesn't neatly sit anywhere on the watch wearing spectrum, and what I mean by that is that there are certain sport watches that are clearly sport watches and can do what sport watches can do. They can handle difficult environments, they do that well. And then there's other more casual watches that you wear laid back, or there's formal watches, dress watches. But I find that this skeleton diver doesn't really fit anywhere because it's not necessarily a go anywhere, do anything watch, and that's actually because this doesn't have a screw down crown. Even though it does purport a 100-meter water resistance, personally I don't find it as reassuring when there's no screw down crown. I really don't know why they didn't do that. I mean, even my dress watches have screw down crowns, and that's probably for cost cutting measures, but they've been able to implement it there. So I'm not sure why they didn't implement a screw down crown. And also, this has an acrylic crystal. Acrylic crystals do mean that you can more easily buff them out, but they are a lot more scratch prone. So I wouldn't really call this a sports watch, but it's also not really a casual watch because I think that that skeleton silvery dial is a bit bold for a casual watch. Of course, this is far from a dress watch. So I think that this piece, you really have to like it for the way that it is because it doesn't really neatly sit anywhere on the spectrum. Because this is using an NH70 dial and this has a silvery tone to it alongside the silver hands and the dark gray dial, it's actually quite difficult to read. It's not the most difficult thing to do, but compared to some other watches, this is not the most legible watch that there is out there. I'm also not 100% sure why they put an acrylic crystal on here other than for cost-cutting measures, because they said that it's to make it look a little bit more vintagey with the warm hue and stuff. But the thing is, this is nowhere near a vintage diver. When everyone sees this, they know for sure it's a modern diver, especially with that ceramic bezel. Also, with the skeletonized dial, that is clearly not vintage. So I think this acrylic crystal would have worked better on some other divers that had an aluminum bezel and faux patina, and not a skeletonized diver watch with a ceramic bezel. I think they kind of clash. I was not a huge fan of skeleton watches because I've always thought that they were a little bit too busy and a little bit illegible and a little bit too bold for my taste. However, on this DIY Watch Club, I think that they actually executed this very, very well because this actually has a sapphire dial with wave patterns on it. The skeletonized part of this is a little bit more nuanced. This watch is more versatile with other outfits because it looks kind of like a silvery dial, and if you look at it from afar, it doesn't seem like a skeleton watch. So I think it works with a lot more outfits, and personally, I really like watches that allow the user to notice certain parts about a watch design that other people who are passing by would never notice. It's like a little treat just for you and your eyes. It's harder to see the skeletonized parts unless you actually take a serious intentional glance at it, and you'll see the working parts of the NH70 movement. Also, another thing I really appreciate about this watch is that it's not a clomage like some other watches on AliExpress are, or watches at this price point. A $300 watch that are not from Seiko or these other large Japanese watch brands tend to be a little bit more clomage and lack original design. But here, DIY Watch Club has a mixture of different inspirations for this watch, and I truly do think that they were inspired and they're not copying another design. This has an amazing bezel action sound. Probably one of the best sounding bezels that I own right now. It's also extremely comfortable on the wrist because it comes on a NATO strap, and the watch itself is pretty light. The lume is quite strong. They are using BGW9 lume on this dial, and it lasts pretty long. I've been going to sleep with this watch on, and I've been able to read the time when I've woken up in the middle of the night time, so it lasts a very long time. Right now it's on sale for around $280 USD. So this is not a cheap present. If you are willing to spend that money on someone else, I think that this watch kit serves as a pretty cool present. As I mentioned before, I basically ran into no issues. Everything in this watch seemed very thoughtful, down to the pre-cut stem with it glued to the crown with the dial feet already being cut. Everything just seems very, very intentional with this watch. If you are just getting into the modding scene, this is one of the ways to go. Now, of course, this may not be the highest quality of parts, you know? This isn't your Grail watch. It doesn't have polished chamfers and all the bells and whistles that some other watches have. I think DIY Watch Club prioritizes the experience of building a watch first before prioritizing the watch result itself. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This watch is far from unwearable. In fact, I really do enjoy wearing this a lot. It's a pretty unique diver. One thing that contributes to that is that they got rid of their logo on this particular dial. It's just a little D there, so I think that works a lot better. The crown's a D, so it's more cohesive. It's a given, you know? If you were to buy it on AliExpress, it's gonna be pretty cheap compared to this watch kit. But that's not what DIY Watch Club is offering. DIY Watch Club is offering a hassle-free experience to build a watch and actually gain all the skills of watch building without all the stress that usually comes with watch building. It also offers a non-clomage mod. If you've been in the watch modding scene for a little while, I would definitely recommend checking out their other kits because they don't just have this kit. They have Sellita-based watch kits, and they also have this bluing kit to blue your hands, which also seems really, really interesting. If you want to check out some watch pictures, I have an Instagram account I would definitely recommend checking out, and a Watch Crunch account that you'll get to see some photos and sneak peeks of my upcoming reviews, which is pretty fun. And I have built 3 other watches, so if you're interested in looking at some of my other watch builds and how that went, because I think that the other processes were a lot more difficult, but they were, I think, more entertaining. So definitely recommend checking out those, and I hope this watch channel, Patina's, like your favorite watch. I will see you in another video on the Time Ticker.